All right, welcome to a very special episode of Cosmic Road. We are joined by the one and only Steve Bassett. Thank you very much for joining us, Steve.
Good to be with you again.
Yeah, well, off to a crazy start for the new year, but you are very optimistic and positive about where we're going, and I would love to explore where that optimism comes from.
Sure, sure. Um, well, I've always been optimistic. You have to be optimistic to be an activist. If you're not, you're in the wrong line of work. I mean, you got to try something else. Um, and sometimes I've been a little overly optimistic. But if you're going to err, you need to err on the side of too much as opposed to too little. This is different now. We are in probably the end game of the truth embargo, 77 years on. There's a lot of reasons for that, and I'll try to touch on some of them. But the thing that's uh, right now dominating the situation is what has come to be called drone swarms. This is the term for it. And there's a reason why it's called drone swarms. But in fact, it's really not about drones. It's about a UFO flap,
So
or
you see an NHI cause behind the so-called mystery drones.
the NHI is the driving situation, and by that, of course, non-human intelligence. As far as I'm concerned, they're extraterrestrial drones, extraterrestrial, and not drones, but extraterrestrial craft are up there, or extraterrestrial generated stuff is up there, right? It's hard to pin it down, but what is certainly clear is that saucers know, and there's been plenty of sightings of those. But lights or orbs, plasma, I think it's plasma, but something like that is all over the place. All right. Okay. And like some fool will probably say, it's just ball lightning. No. Right. It's like, so we're talking about an unprecedented number of lights in the sky that aren't supposed to be there, that by and large we cannot do. We cannot generate that, right? Not in the way that people are seeing, filming, and then it's being posted on the internet. So there's a non-human technology factor here, and it's been going on for about 2 years, as near as I can tell. I mean, it's not like been studying this from the beginning, didn't even realize it was underway. We just got some hints, but there's always stuff turning up in the sky. It's always turning up on the internet. Some of it's fake, some of it's just misinterpretation, some of it's clearly solid. That's always going on. So I didn't really pick up on what was happening. I mean, I was aware of what's going on in Washington, D.C. I mean, in Washington, D.C., the disclosure process is just moving forward, almost with, resistance, but absolutely moving forward. So the first inkling, I think, of what happened, what's going on, occurs a little over 2 years ago. And it comes in the form of a video that emerges, right, out into the net, regarding a drone swarm, quote unquote, around a naval ship at sea at night. You may remember it. And it got a lot of play. It's up in the net. Again,
And
so
this
many
is one
things
of the
like
ones
that.
that are shared by Jeremy Corbell.
Yes, it is. And so it's one more video. What do you do? People comment on it, discussed it, what have you, debated it, but it's just one more of countless videos that are turning up from all over the world. But, and this is where it gets interesting, for whatever reason, that video was shown at the first hearing since 1968 on the UAP issue, which is essentially 54 years. 54 years after the 1968 half-day hearing in the House, we have another hearing. It's not big, it's fairly small, in which one of the House subcommittees, I think it was Armed Services, brought the then acting directors of the UAP task force to come up to the Hill to give an update of what they're doing. Okay. And this was on May 17th of 2022. we'd already had that report the previous year, June 25, that went to the public. It wasn't much, but another report classified went to the Congress. So that's almost a whole year going by. And then they bring the people up, Bray and Moultrie, right, Scott?
Heckle and
And
Jekyll.
that's right. And they came up and testified and gave an update. It was hardly a big deal. They didn't know much, and also they couldn't say much, and so it was a combination of both.
And
They,
also they were
they didn't
using
know
like the
much, and a lot of what they knew they
West
could.
debunkings. I mean, like for the pyramid or the triangle, one of the Jeremy Corbell's videos, they were saying it was the lens effect, with a bouquet effect, I believe, of the lens. And that was, a theory originated by Mick West, which was, BS. They weren't even using the Travis Taylor explanation, who was actually the chief scientist of the UAP task force. And he said, no, the bouquet lens effect explanation is bogus. That's an actual object in the sky there. And they did not go with the chief scientist explanation. They went with Mick West explanation. That's why I call them Heckle and Jekyll. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. Absolutely. You're paying pretty good attention, my friend. Yes. It was only one video that was shown. It was that one, right? Well, wait a minute. There might have been a Go Fast or something, but this is the only video regarding drones that was shown. And yeah, Bray just sort of dismissed it using something along exactly the lines that you said. And so fine. And I thought, I don't think that explanation is going to work. But what is new, right? It's like I didn't take that much from it, other than. But in general, I knew that they weren't going to acknowledge NHI. They weren't going to go there. They're just trying to get this thing done. It's up there to just get a basic statement out, and that's it. The UAP task force was not set up to confirm the NHI. It was set up in preparation for the confirmation of the NHI. Even then, going all the way back to the beginning. So, okay, but that's significant that they brought that video in at all. And I believe the reason they did is that they understood that this was a problem. And it wasn't simply about their explanation was kind of bogus. It was, and a lot of Americans are not going to pick up on this, but the internet, of course, always picks up on everything. And that is, there is no way in hell that a naval ship, a warship, is going to allow drones to fly around it for any length of time, period. It's simply not going to happen. Drones can sink that ship. And for those that are going, are you sure? You just need to go check up on the Ukraine-Russia war, where incredible amounts of destruction and death is being rained down from both sides by what? By drones. They can blow up tanks, right? And so consequently, a couple drones around a warship that are targeted in at the right place could sink the destroyer. And if you're a captain of the destroyer, this is not going to look good on your naval record. It's simply not going to happen. They will blow them out of the sky. They have guns on those ships that can put out a couple thousand rounds a minute. And so they would just go and they'd be gone. But they didn't. And that was the problem. And I think that's why they showed that video, meaning some people are out there going, why didn't you shoot those down? Why didn't you shoot those down? Oh, because it wasn't really drones. It was blah, 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 blah. And so, but that just got biased. But that was essentially a preemptive move, I think, by the DOD to sort of mitigate a problem that they hoped wouldn't keep happening, right? Right? And so that's 2 years ago.
Oh,
And then as
just to
time goes,
clarify, I don't mean to interrupt. I hate to, but because we were talking about the bouquet effect and how they were debunking that,
yeah,
there were multiple incidents that Jeremy Corbell shared with the world, and there was one incident where there was a swarm of objects that they were calling drones, and they were I want to say there was one more spherical, and that was maybe the one time where you saw the object go into the water, and that was a really great video. And then there was another incident with another war fleet where they were seeing these triangular objects, and that was the debunking. But either way, those objects, especially the swarm that Steve is talking about, they were calling drones at the time. So I just wanted to clarify that for the audience that may not be familiar with that.
But if I'm not mistaken, there was only one film about that involving something around a warship, correct?
I
Just
think they were both taken from fleets. I think they were both two separate incidents about warships.
well, the
What
other one, I'm afraid the other one has escaped me. But was the did the other one have them in as close as the ones that were on that destroyer?
I want to say that the really good one, the one you're talking about, the drone one or the quote unquote drone one, where you had the object going into the water. We also had video of the radar screen observing these objects.
All right.
And it was really cool because you could see the objects blip in and out on the radar screen. I don't remember the name of the ship, but we could look that up. Yeah, it was an
Okay.
amazing incident. And
So, and this is fine. I mean, two, no problem. Again, it's an indication that something is going on there. But let me do the distinction again. Something is, you get a shot from a ship, whatever, something coming into the water and going out of the water. That's significant because they have the ability to do this. Okay, the real and that's not an earth-shaking thing. What is, and I say earth-shaking? That is not a telltale thing. What is telltale is this: any film showing any kinds of drones close in to these ships, they're going to take them out. They're simply not going to allow them to fly in that close. And so that is a problem for the Department of Defense. And I think they tried to preempt that by at least debunking that one film at the May 17th, 2002. All right. So what happens after that is, and there's so much going on, it is really not easy to pay attention to this stuff. I mean, you cannot follow all of this. Is that apparently these quote things were turning up around other sensitive facilities here and there and whatever, and something would be reported, might turn up here, but it wasn't coalescing into a phenomena. It was just part of the whole background noise of activity in the sky. But eventually it escalated. And it wasn't that long ago when it really took off. So, what I'm suggesting is that what we've seen, this extraordinary explosion of stuff in the sky that's not supposed to be there, which goes back several months, was actually a process that began a couple of years ago being slowly escalated. All right. And so, essentially, over the last couple of months, what we have had is a full-fledged UFO flap. And for those that know this field well, know exactly what a UFO flap is. I forget where the term flap came from, but
I want to say
it is a
World
whole
War
lot of sighting.
One.
What now?
World War One flap. It was like a panic. As World War One or World War Two, there were the bombs and there was the panic of the
Oh no, no.
bombs. And that's
Well,
what
you're
the
talking
word.
about you're talking about the Battle of LA.
No, I'm just like the word flap. That's when they started to use,
Yeah,
you know.
I should check the origin
But
of that.
yeah, when they
More
started using it
narrative.
for UFOs, yeah, good question.
So, but eventually, a lot of sightings happening over a period of time is a flap. The most famous flap, I think, in this last 77 years, and it wasn't a big one, but it was the 8 day events over the capital of the United States, which is where I'm at right now, in July, early July, almost 5 years to the week after Roswell, of multiple craft flying over the Capitol at will, and really got the attention of the United States government. I mean, they panicked. Uh, there's no public photographs that I'm aware of, and we've looked. We know that some photographs almost certainly taken. People didn't walk around. Every single person in Washington wasn't walking around with a camera at that time. So we think there are photographs, but they are in government hands. If a actual real photograph turns up in the public domain, I hope to God they get it to the right people as soon as possible. But what has happened is that some people who saw early on, way back, these a photo or more, did representations of it, and you see them online. And one of them is famous. It's so good that it looks like a photograph, but it basically shows the five of these quote balls of a light over the United States Capitol. They tried to explain it away as a temperature inversion that was allowing people to see car lights from I don't know where the hell, an inversion that's never happened since and it never happened before. It was the best they could do. And
There
General
weren't any
Stanford,
swamps around, so it had to be a temperature inversion.
that's right. General Sanford filmed an interview that was put out to try to put people whatever. This is a big deal, and it triggered the Robertson panel. That's what triggered the Robertson panel. They knew they had to take some serious action because apparently the ETs were going to keep this stuff up, right? And well, it's one thing to be seen here or there over some Oklahoma farm field, but they just turned up over Washington for 8 days. So that's the most famous flap. Some of them have gone on longer. Well, the flap that's going on right now is the biggest in history. And I'm talking worldwide. I don't think anything like this has happened. There have been probably some days where and a lot of sightings happen in a single day, but 2 months of these things turning up over many, many areas, not just in the United States, but other countries, certainly the UK, but other countries. And we know this because, well, half the world's population has a phone with a camera. What can I say? 2 billion, 4 billion cameras. And so people are filming it like hell, and they're putting it on the internet. It's all being amalgamated. And so we know that this is happening all over the place. And by and large, they seem to be very close to sensitive facilities, which could be bases, it could be nuclear plants, it could be anything along those lines. They seem to be focused there. Well, what can I say? That is a huge deal. It is hard to describe how significant it is. And it is an enormous problem for the United States government. In other words, the ETs do whatever the hell they want. And the government knows this. And the government hopes, well, whatever you're going to do, it's like, you'll be discreet. You won't go too far, right? Because we're trying to maintain a truth embargo down here. It's not easy, guys. So kind of keep it cool. Well, they're going to do what they're going to do. And what they're doing is this right now. And so this is the circumstance we're in. We're in a massive UFO flap. Now, there's several things notable about this. One, I already mentioned, the concentration on sensitive facilities. They're not destroying anything. They're not, I'm sure they're not, it's like a surveillance program. They're going to do that. Why sensitive facilities? Well, if you're trying to get the government's attention, really get its attention, if you want to put the government in a corner where it has almost no options but the one you want, you do this over sensitive facilities, obviously. If you're out in North Dakota having a big flap, or over some, crop fields in Missouri, who cares? It's like, a lot of things going on out there. I don't give a damn. But when you're doing it over sensitive facilities, it guarantees that there's going to be immediate questions. What in the hell is going on? And what are you doing about it?
Yeah, that's a statement.
I believe that's the reason for that. Now, the second thing is no saucers. We have plenty of sightings of saucers and very extent craft. There seems to be virtually none of that from them, right? Just these light phenomena in formations and huge numbers, moving around here or there, whatever, just a hell of a display. And I'm thinking, okay, why that? Because I think they're trying to accomplish something, but they don't want to overdo it. They're trying to make something happen, but they don't want to overstimulate the situation, get too aggressive, and they don't need to be. And so with that, let's get to the point. You're the United States government. The ETs have decided to do for 2 months what they did over Washington, D.C. in 1952, but over like 10, 20, 30 locations and other countries. What do you do? Well, basically, you do nothing as long as you possibly can, but that didn't last long because the internet is what it is. It's a force of nature. And so very quickly, the government is confronted with questions. And of course, I'm starting to pay attention, but it's when the government started answering these questions that my level of interest and excitement just went way, way up. And the logic was clear. It was not hard to figure out. The questions were simple. What is going on? All right. Initially, it was, we're looking into it. We're checking into this. Okay. And the questions kept coming and coming until finally they came back with, these are drones. Okay. They start off with, we're looking into it. And then they come back and say, it means we've looked into it. And these are drones. Okay. That's it, right? No problem. Oh, no. No, no, no. What's the first question that comes when the government says there's all these drones flying around multiple facilities in the United States? Whose drones are they? And the answer ultimately was, initially they kind of hemmed and hawed, was they're not ours. Okay, fine. What's the next question? The next question is, if they're not ours, who are they? Are they another nation? The answer is no. And then the next question is, if they're not ours and they're not another nation, where are they? Who is behind it? And the answer is, we don't know. Now, when you think about that, you have to understand how grotesquely absurd it is. But it's absurd because it has no choice. There's nothing they can do. Let's go back and start over. This thing is going on. Finally, the press turn up over the DOD at the briefing room, or over the house, the White House briefing room. What is happening here? Okay, if the answer is okay, we just don't know right off the bat, right? Well, actually, it was kind of that. If the answer is drones, okay, which gives them a little room. The next question is, whose are they? If they say they're ours, they have a massive problem, because the next question is, why is the United States military, I assume, flying drones over many facilities around the country and in the UK?
Doesn't make a
For
lot
what
of sense.
reason? Yeah, and the answer is there is no answer to that. Whatever they were going to come up with would be grotesque. I mean, it would be absurd. So they can't answer that question. So they have to say they're not ours. Then the next question is, well, then are they another country's? They could have said yes, which would have taken them off the hook, sort of, for a while. But the next question after that is, are you saying that other countries are flying all manner of craft over military facilities and other sensitive facilities, and you're doing nothing? You're just doing nothing? You're not shooting them down, you're not capturing them, you're not putting the areas on alert, you're just doing nothing? Not too long ago, just a silly, stupid balloon got a hole in it and came down in the air traffic zone. We went completely nuts. Ultimately, shot it down with $500,000 rockets. Took out two other balloons, probably innocent. Who the hell knows? But this, nothing. No, they can't answer that question. So they have to say they're another nation, which leaves, and then where are they coming from? They can't say, well, they're not human, which explains it. They have to say, we don't know. And so the ETs, by doing this, have literally put the United States government, and any other government that's going to be pressured on this, but the US government's the one that matters, literally in the corner, completely painted into a corner. They have no way out from this. The only way that the truth embargo can survive this much longer is if very soon all of that goes away. There are no unusual lights, plasma balls, size small, large, whatever, anywhere, like in DC in 1952, because after about 9 days, it stopped. If it had gone on for 2 months, I assure you, we'd have probably had disclosure back in 1952. That's the only way they get out of this. Okay, now, here is my assessment, which I actually was talking about this early on, and it's been other people have come forward with a similar assessment. So I'm feeling more and more confident this is the case. The only thing the government, the United States, could do in this extraordinary situation, and it was clever, is to start launching military drones up into these areas. In other words, if they're over a facility, put military drones up there as fast as possible. And military drones, of which we have many of which we don't even know exist, right? So it's probably some stuff up there that has never been seen before, all right, by any public, because it's highly classified. Drone research is highly classified. It is the future of warfare, okay? And everybody is trying to make the most significant, clever, lethal drones you can find, you can make, and keeping it absolutely classified. Okay, we're not talking about amateur hobbyist stuff bought on Amazon. And so they launch them up in there knowing that people will see them. And to make sure, some of them had lights on them, little basic green, red lights. Okay. Though they're not like the lights on aircraft, though some aircraft were seen with the standard lights, but most people know, okay, it's a plane. But these aren't a plane, but they clearly have got these lights. And so people are saying, yeah, that's a drone. Some of them even have propellers. Right. So they're making noises like some drones, they look like drones, thus allowing the government to say and create a term for our time, a new term, drone swarms. All right. We're dealing with drone swarms. Okay. And so for a lot of people, for the vast majority of people, which is standard of Americans that learn about this, and everyone is seeing it because it's been on the news everywhere. I've logged in over 200 articles on my print media archive, I'll show you later, about drone swarms in English language press, America, UK, India, Pakistan, Australia, Canada, whatever. So everybody knows about drone swarms. And so they've got to cover. This was the best they could do. Create an alternative explanation that has a bit of legitimacy and direct people away from all that other stuff, which is clearly not military drones. And that's where things stand right now, kind of just right on the edge, dancing on top of a point as they try to decide what the hell to do next, and hoping beyond hope that the ETs will stop this. Right? Please don't do this to us. So that is what has been going on for 2 months, and all of the video, and even if the ETs completely leave the field of play tomorrow, untold numbers of filming of this is on the internet, and it's going to stay there until the end of time. It's going to be seen by millions and millions of people, not 1, 2, 3, but hundreds of videos from different countries, different locations in the US is up there showing all this stuff. It's not going away. And so the government is not going to be able to just walk away from this. They're going to keep getting asked, what the hell is that? Over and over again. And so their situation is basically untenable. And so it is my fundamental assessment that what we have here is, I like to call, an ET intervention or an NHI intervention. Okay. Now let's talk about that. Interventions are kind of a thing, right? Everybody kind of knows about them. It's shown on television, and they do films about it and whatever. And the reason it's a big thing is America, which has been under stress, really under stress for so long, right? As the modern world continues to overwhelm us and the difficulties and problems of life get better, our suicide rates are going straight up, and we're addicted to so many drugs, nobody can keep track of it. And so people are getting in a lot of trouble, and the interventions are required. And with few exceptions, you don't have an intervention family gathering together to surprise a member and try to get them to see the light, because they're getting totally obsessed with their model trains in the basement. Okay. They're doing it because they're addicted to something. So the ETs are doing an intervention. Okay. And it's pretty much the intervention of the human race. So what are we addicted to? War. That's what we're addicted to, right? They're not intervening because we're starting to get into fentanyl. They're intervening because the human
that'd be
race.
nice. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so that is my basic assessment of that. Now, let's shift gears here. Well, the ETs are up there, light balls, plasma balls going everywhere, huge numbers, down on the ground. The political process of disclosure in the United States is moving forward relentlessly. And quick recap. All right. Since 2022, there have been approximately 8 hearings after having only 2 in the previous 70 years, actually 75 years. They have 8 hearings, 6 of which were, I think, basically people coming up to report on what's going on. And this is just the ones we know about. There could easily be another half or more hearings that were absolutely fully classified hearings in which people came up, sit in front of a committee, took the oath, and then gave information to them, but it wasn't public. So that's been going on now since 2022. Two of these hearings were pretty substantial. The famous one was 2023. That was, hang on a second, April 26. No, April 14. I take that back. It was June, oh God, it was June 5. The Grush hearing, okay? Bombshell, huge, all right? So, and then we've had another major hearing, and that was recently November 13th. Both of these are in the House Oversight Subcommittee. There is a group in there that have taken this issue on solid, head on, all right? They are, the key people are all very conservative Republicans. Mace, Luna, Burchett,
There's
Burleson.
Moskowitz.
But then you have Moskowitz, you have Garcia, you have some others that are not hard conservatives. All right, that's okay. So it's bipartisan. I'm just saying. It just so happens that the key people are hard conservatives, which is interesting. The Democrats have been left behind on this issue more than once, and they're really being left behind now. The principal engagement from, I guess you could say, the Democrats has occurred in the Senate. All right, because all of the members of the Senate Intel Committee have clearly been behind that legislation. But the Senate stays back. It doesn't get out there into the fray. All right. They're not going on TV for 20 minutes or something and railing about the fact there's ETs here and what we're doing about it. The House doesn't.
And when they have a hearing, they interview Kozlowski or Kirkpatrick or something. They interview Arrow.
They haven't had a major hearing like the House, but they have hearings. They're being very dignified. They're keeping within within the lines, because they are a major committee. They have a sort of higher responsibility. They are the Intelligence Committee. They're dealing with a lot of things. And so they have an image to maintain. I get that. So there are Democratic involvement. It's pretty much the Senate. The issue congressionally is being dominated in the House by mostly conservatives and the House Oversight Committee, which is now getting relentless. Along the way, I think Tim Burchett started this, but whoever, they actually set up the first UAP caucus in history, right? Just the first UAP caucus in history of the Congress.
That's
right?
Huge. That's huge.
You go back 40 years and tell somebody in 40 years there's going to be a UAP caucus in the Congress, they'd be going, you got to get out of mind. Yeah. Crazy. It's not going to happen. So we got that. So, and the last hearing, November 13th, was also powerful. It didn't have the big thing like Grush, but it had substance. It had 4 separate witnesses from 4 different backgrounds coming at the issue from 4 different ways, all with very established credentials. So it was like a gravitas fest. All right. And so while they didn't come up with something quite in the level of Grush's statements, what they were saying was very significant and reinforcing. All right. And so that's important, because that's the kind of testimony that gets the attention of other high-level politicians, of academics, of the publishers of newspapers, right? The heads of networks. That's the kind of stuff. The one guy coming forward and say, I have secondhand info, we've got NHI Tech. That's powerful, but it doesn't have the gravitas that those people need. In other words, that hearing, chaired by Mace, probably has advanced this issue far more than people really could possibly know right now, and has already probably led some other things, okay? But it gets better, because after that hearing, thanks to Tyler Roberts, I had the opportunity to meet with Nancy Mace, Representative Mace, not only privately, but also be part of an interview of her, myself, and Captain Robert Salas, the witness to one of the nuclear ICBM shutdowns. And that interview was filmed. It's up on the net. I need to start collecting that and getting it promoted more. I put it out.
I'm glad you talked about that, because that was one of my questions. I wanted to ask you about that interview. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, it's non-trivial. It's the first time that Robert Salas, Captain Salas, has been able to talk directly to a member of Congress on camera in the 30 years he's been trying to get in front of the Congress to give their testimony. He is the leader of basically the leader of the ICBM shutdown witnesses, and to some degree, all the nuclear tampering witnesses. And nuclear tampering would include a Robert Jacobs, who filmed the warhead that got zapped by a craft that was going around a missile doing 8,000, 10,000 miles an hour. who's been telling that story for years and has never had a chance to testify. And there are other witnesses directly to the ICBM shutdowns. He's been the leader. They've held 2 press conferences in Washington. 4 books have been written. They did a documentary film. And of course, behind all of that is Robert Hastings, the legendary researcher who just did nothing but research this and speak about it in the early days. There was something about his gravitas and his approach that got him access to the universities. He ended up doing 450, 500 university lectures on this for years before I even got into the field. But it wasn't enough to trip the switches. But a lot of college kids learned about the ICBM shutdowns. But he of course, has been behind all of this. And he is not in the best of health now. He doesn't travel so much, but he just can't get enough credit. But I should note that recently Jesse Michaels put out another one of his podcast docs, similar to the one he did with Grush after Grush testified in 2023, and it's just a bombshell. I mean, it goes into the nuclear weapons shutdowns. It goes to the drone swarms. It's got a full interview with Hastings. A whole nother one of these is coming with more of Hastings, and so this issue is happening. And I am pleased because I've been, pushing this for forever. I mean, I've done everything I could to get those men in front of a congressional hearing, including giving them the opportunity to testify for 2.5 hours in front of a mock congressional hearing in 2013. This was the citizen hearing on disclosure. And of the 30 hours of testimony, 2.5 was from the nuclear tampering witnesses. Including Bob Salas, David Schindel, and they were giving, quote, testimony under a mock oath to the mock congressional hearing panel, which is made up of 6 former members of Congress. It lasted for 5 days. It was broadcast to the world, so anybody, any journalist, any politician could watch it. And so that's the closest they've come. And that was 11 years ago. And so in this happening process just happened to include the opportunity to meet with Mace. And so she talks to him. We have an excellent interview. She's paying very close attention. And then on camera, she says, and it was either on the interview or in a subsequent interview, short one, but I think it was the interview, she says she wants the nuclear witnesses. So now where we are is Nancy Mace has said several times, I'm having another hearing, and I'm going to bring the nuclear witnesses. And the Department of Defense damn well knows this. Now, the interesting part of this, there's another member of the committee, which I learned, who wants the nuclear witnesses. And all that information has been sent to this person by me. And the information that I sent this individual, which I've also provided to all 17 members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, as well as all of the House Oversight Subcommittee, includes, all right, a statement, a cover letter from Bob Salas, a series of witness statements and affidavits of the testimony of these witnesses that was put together almost 6 years ago. And I just happened to have 50 copies of them. So I delivered 2 hard copies to all of those offices, one hand delivered, and then the second mailed in to a specific person in the staff, knowing it would take about 5 or 6 days. So over a period of 10 days, 2 hard copies go into all of those offices. Then I emailed the file of those affidavits and witness statements to all of those offices. All right. And in that email, I included links to the 2.5-hour testimony that these men gave to that mock hearing in 2013. And so I did everything I could to seed the United States Congress with what these men know and have testified outside of Congress to, have written the books, done the documentary, all of these 30 years since Bob Salas first came forward in 1994. And I can say with high confidence that is now in play. And we are going to see these men take an oath and testify in that hearing. No disrespect intended to the first 2, Grush and the November 13th hearing. That hearing is going to take things to an entire level. Now, let me add this. 6 days after the House Oversight Subcommittee hearing, chaired by Mace, Gillibrand in the Senate, Senator Gillibrand held another one of these briefing meetings. Okay, it wasn't announced till very late, and so while there were hundreds and hundreds of people trying to get into the House Subcommittee hearing, only about 20 people showed up at the Senate hearing room. So I just waltzed on in and listened to it. Now again, this is just 6 days later, and so what was that about? Again, I'm trying to paint a picture so people can realize this is all happening. You know, I'm not just projecting. This is happening. And
Oh,
so
before you get into that, I just wanted to thank you for all your efforts of what you were doing, sending that stuff to all the Congress people and getting them engaged in this and giving them information.
it's my job.
Yeah,
I
I
appreciate
know,
it.
I speak for all of us. I think that we really appreciate that.
Believe me, there are other people doing tons of work. And I'll talk about them later. But wait, I'm just trying. That's what I'm doing. I'm focusing on that, not to brag, but because it's so germane to the key thing right now is getting those nuclear witnesses. But every other aspect of these is being pushed at the Congress, and we've got 6 or 7 registered lobbyists now. There's a UAP disclosure fund is I think that's the name of it, out of San Francisco, is actually a 501(c)(4) political nonprofit. I mean, it's all happening. But here's what's notable about the Gillibrand briefing 6 days after the Mace hearing in the House. She brought in the new Aero director, Kozlowski, all right, who has a very substantial background, totally appropriate, including intelligence stuff, cryptology, and whatever. People go, oh, cryptology, whatever. He's got the background, okay? Kirkpatrick had the background too, all right? So he has just become the new director. And he's become the new director because Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick basically, he had an extremely difficult time as the head of Aero. Maybe he knows the reasons and maybe he doesn't, but I sure as hell do. Whether he was informed or not going in.
Oh, he was informed.
Aero was set up just to be Aero, to exist. It wasn't set up to do anything. The less it did, the better. It's one of the reasons that early on Gillibrand was complaining they weren't giving any money. That's because they didn't need any, right? Aero was not set up to find out what's going on and tell the American people. The government has known what's going on for 70 years plus, all right? So the DOD knows, a huge number of people within the overall military intelligence complex knows. So why the hell do you set up Aero? You set up Aero not to find out, but to be there, to be in place when the disclosure happens so that it's already there, structured, some funding to address the issue post-disclosure, meaning the day after disclosure, when the entire world will be coming to let me put it this way, the entire the population of the United States and every journalist is going to be wanting to have a lot of questions answered instantly. And so if you don't have all this set up, including the legislation, including other involvements with NASA and so forth, you're flat-footed. You got nothing, right? And it'll be utterly awful. It will be chaos. So they had to set it up in advance. I get that. The problem they faced is they couldn't say why. You know, why did NASA suddenly decide to create a UFO panel, group, right? Because they just realized there's UFOs? No, because it was appropriate that be there so NASA didn't look too awful when disclosure happened. That's the same reason they set up Aero, right? And the reason, of course, they're passing the legislation is not so we can finally find out what this is so that legislation is in place when every single person in this country is going to be having 1,000 questions about what they just confirmed is real, all right? And so when you look at the UAP Disclosure Act, if you read it, the one that was initially submitted, or even the final version of it, which lost the powers, you're not reading a bill about how we're going to find out what's going on. The whole bill is about how the government's going to give us everything that they have on this thing, which the government says is not there really. And so what it's about is getting the confirmation of the truth from the government, right? But almost certainly, and I'd love to ask Senator Schumer this, they certainly know that bill, as powerful it was, and if it had been passed it fully, meaning nothing was taken out of it, right, that that real process was not going to really get underway, and we weren't going to get much until disclosure took place. And I'm sure that Schumer assumed that if that bill got passed like that, disclosure would follow pretty soon. Because you see, the bill was just prelude to major hearings that could take place in the Senate Intelligence Committee, no disrespect intended, which has a lot more gravitas than the House subcommittee of any committee. All right. And once that started, the witnesses were going to be the nuclear witnesses and a bunch of other people, God knows, plus all kinds of evidence they could bring forward if they so chose. And so, that's kind of the way things were going. All right. And so but Kirkpatrick was caught in the middle. In other words, he really can't speak the truth of this issue. He just needs to be the head of Arrow, maybe give a briefing or something, and just hang in there until we get disclosure. Well, disclosure got stretched out, right? If you go back to when he takes over, okay, what happens shortly thereafter, or right around that time? An incredibly dangerous war breaks out in Europe between Russia and the Ukraine. One of the most dangerous wars ever, because the use of nukes has been normalized and the chances of being used are greater than they ever been. It's upsetting NATO. It's a huge deal. Okay, requiring enormous attention by the most competent government we could possibly generate, and just superior diplomacy and whatever the hell. None of that's happening. It's a mess. Okay, and that happens, and then just as well, before that's even resolved, you have an explosion in the Middle East. One of the most awful events in the incredible ongoing ancient tragedy that is the Middle East. And so guess what? The idea that we're going to get this thing done, get the hearings in the Senate, blah, 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 get disclosure, wouldn't happen. And so the whole thing stretches out, and Kirkpatrick is increasingly in an awkward situation. But that situation went from awkward to impossible when David Grush, out of nowhere, at least in terms of the public, I think that the probably Kirkpatrick knew about him. I'm sure a lot of the people at the DoD knew about him going back a ways. What I think they did not know is that he might actually go public as technically a whistleblower. They thought that he had his thing, he was going to do whatever. He wasn't happy. He might retire and just walk away, but whatever. He actually went forward with a major deal. And so the Grush thing comes out, right, and just literally sets this issue on fire. And so the idea of non-human tech, we know what that is, extraterrestrial tech, alien tech, whatever the hell you want to call it, and bodies, has now been put right out there in a way that is pretty damn substantive, despite what some of the debunkers and skeptics say. It was incredibly significant. Wow. And so, whoa, right? Wow. What's going to happen immediately after that? A whole bunch of people are going to be calling and emailing Arrow, even high-level people, and asking Dr. Kirkpatrick, what's the deal with this non-human tech? And he could not say anything. Maybe some insider with the classification level, certainly his superior, whatever. But in terms of everybody else, he couldn't say, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we got some non-human tech. Absolutely not. His situation was awful. And so he realizing that he was kind of in a trap, he got pretty angry. And so he made the personal decisions to attack Grush immediately, all right, several times, and eventually quit. But before he actually left, as things kept evolving and becoming even more intense, because of the Schumer's effort, the bill submitted, and so forth, they said, as a kind of a last-ditch, desperate Hail Mary pass, they said, let's see if we can stop this by doing what we did in 68, 69. In other words, the Condit report, right, that justified shutting down Blue Book. A very esteemed entity, whatever, signed off by somebody with degrees that says, look, we looked at all this, we studied it all, and there's really nothing there that indicates extraterrestrial. It's come to be called the Arrow study. And one day the historians will find out how it came to be that they were able to convince Cahol, or possibly he volunteered to sign that study, Dr. Kirkpatrick, on the way out the door. All right. And that's unfortunate because that study is going to be shown to be one of the most grotesque lies that the US government has ever done. And the US government has done some pretty damn fine lies in its history. It is completely bogus. It was essentially desperation. And out the door he goes. Okay, we got to replace him. Now, after everything that's happened, it's like the new director of ATIP is going to probably has a pretty good idea what's been happening out there, right? They know about Grush, they know about all of this, they know about the Arrow study, whoever it is, and that person ended up being Kozlowski. And so he comes in with a pretty good understanding, I believe. And so what happens 6 days after the hearing in the House is that Kirsten Gillibrand and Joni Ernst, right, the two senators that have pretty much been doing the light briefings on this together, right? Though oftentimes it's in a room off to the side. This one was actually deliberately in one of the big Senate hearing rooms, right? And it's a cavern, right? There's 20 of us in there. So, plus there was staff and a few others.
I
But
can't believe there are only 20 people in there.
20 what we'll call civilians, right? About 20. But then there was some staff, there was some representatives and her staff. But overall, it was a cavern with a few people. So anyway, so she brings him in, and basically what she's doing is introducing him to the public. In other words, we need to introduce to the public this new director because the whole director thing has been a rocky situation. And so he needs to come in and make some appropriate statements, ask some questions, and that's going to be filmed. And it was live. It was live streamed to the world, right? As was the Mace hearing. 8 or 9 different venues were streaming that around the world, including C-SPAN.
Yeah,
So
I live streamed at least one of those.
yeah, and so millions of people ultimately are seeing that either live or in archive, that very important hearing. Okay, none of this stuff goes away anymore. Something the truth embargo probably knows and realizes, that's not good, right? And so she holds it. She holds it in the hearing room to give it gravitas, and she asks him some basic questions. He gives very reasonable answers. Okay, and not surprisingly, he has some slides. And he brings up a couple of known sightings, one of which is notable, is the Go Fast. And he explains how they've done some very sophisticated analysis on it and have concluded that it was not unusual, that in fact it did not go into the water and come out, but rather that the temperature of it, whatever it was, at times matched the temperature of the water so that the infrared signature essentially disappeared. Okay, it's possible. I'm not denying it, right? Could very well be the case. And there was sophisticated stuff up on that slide. No big deal. I'm not offended by that at all. But then, and he didn't have to do this. He said, well, of course, there were a number of cases, though, that we could not explain. And then he describes one. Okay. And I encourage people to go watch that hearing. It's up there on the net. You can find it on YouTube. And pay close attention to the case he just happens to bring up, right, that they couldn't explain. And it was a doozy. Okay. And so, okay. So this gets done and all well and good. However, something else occurred in that meeting that really caught my attention. She mentioned, I'm pretty sure she did this. It was known. I got it from somewhere. Excuse me. She mentioned that they had met privately before this hearing. All right, and this is not unusual at all. The person that's going to testify essentially will meet privately with the members of Congress or a representative, and they'll go over what they're going to say. She mentions that they did that in a skiff. In a skiff. And I'm going, that's interesting. You don't have to do that. You just get together, the cafeteria in the basement or whatever in your office, and you just go over the testimony. Why did you meet with Kozlowski ahead of that briefing in a skiff? There's only one reason why they did that, is because they could ask him the really tough questions and securely, and he could give the really tough answers securely. And so that tells me that it's very likely Kozlowski is not the new Sean Kirkpatrick, that he has been kind of prepared and given some information as to what is coming in the time frame so that he will be ready. He's going to be the head of one of the best known entities in the world post disclosure. I can assure you, it's got a great acronym and a great name. Totally appropriate. It took 77 years to get the right acronym and the right name. They did it. The all domain anomaly resolution office. Okay, perfect. Arrow. So that happened on the 19th, but it gets better because it was just a few people in the room, at limited situation. My friend Ron James was there. He spends a lot of time in the Hill. He's interacted with a lot of people, including Gillibrand. So she comes off the stage and doesn't just leave the room. And so we just headed on up there. And so Ron got there first. He's talking to him. And then I show up and I get a chance to talk to her directly for the first time. And I happened to mention to her that her office has got a couple of sets of those affidavits and witness statements, and that these witnesses really want to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee. And would you be willing to talk with Robert Salas, the leader? And she said, I'd be happy to talk to Robert Salas. And of course, I reinforced, and she gave me the cards of her two chief staff that were right there, two key staffers. And then I sent them, in addition to all that I'd put into that office, I sent them the full, vile copy of the affidavit statements of Roberts and Jacobs and Schindel and Feigl, nice. Jameson, and so forth. And so, but again, this is on the 19th of November. Okay. We are now in the election is over and we're headed towards a new administration. All right. And so the Congress went out of session, and the next day I think they're gone. They go home for the entire holidays, and so and then of course we're now and then December you're talking about a limited amount of political activity leading up to the new Congress, and so nothing has yet happened there. However, come January the 4th, we have a new Congress. And therefore, Stevie Boy has a fully legitimate reason to start getting up there in the Hill and bugging them again. And so it's very possible that Bob is going to get to talk to some of these people in that interim. I do not think Mace will hold a hearing, though there's more than one person in that committee wanting hearings. And I think there's a bit of a competition going on. And what I mean by that is when Tim Burchett conducted that first hearing, he got press all over the world, and it was all high praise. It was just a very significant thing, and I'm sure that Congressman Burchett was very pleased about that. Not surprisingly, the next hearing was another one of the members of the committee. In this case was Representative Mace, who I'm sure that was covered all over the world, and I'm sure she got a lot of great attention. She remained nonpartisan, as did Burchett. And so it shouldn't shock anybody that some of the other members of the House Subcommittee are going, I'd like to chair a hearing myself, right? Get some good witnesses up here. I could use a little bit of international attention. And so you may see another chairman on the next one, but I don't think it'll be prior to the inauguration. But it sure as hell is going to come together fast after the inauguration. However, there is no reason whatsoever when Bob Salas cannot be brought into DC to talk to a number of these people. And of course, I'm going to be working on that, and we can see what will happen. And if one of the other witnesses can come along, we'll do that. But in all of this, to sum up, gives you a sense that, and this is just a glimpse of the total picture, that the political process leading to resolution of the ET presence, which of course is disclosure, is now light years from where it was just as early as 2017, or even 2017, or even 2019. Okay, and so with the political situation now advancing like this, all of these things on the table, more legislation coming, and then the ETs conducting a giant show over most of the United States. I'm going to suggest that we're just about at the end, that this is going to end. The truth embargo is going to end. It always had to, and it will. And by and large, I think it is going to be relatively okay in terms of how it comes out. However, it's not going to be quite what I expected. And so let me clarify that. There was a straightforward process available to end this going all the way back a good while. Certainly, as you in late 2023, right? A lot had happened at that point. But even into 2024, the first 2 or 3 months, the Senate could have made their move. That would have been Mark Warner's call. I actually ran into him accidentally at a restaurant and gave him my card. It was a total fluke. Couldn't believe it.
You go, Steve.
Yeah. So, and he's great. He's a fine man. He's a wonderful man. He's an incredible man. All of the Senate Intel Committee are fantastic. All of them. House, Democrats, Republicans. And so they would eventually bring in the big shots, 10, 15 Grushes, including the nuclear witnesses, major hearing, worldwide broadcast, huge deal, about a week, bring in some additional evidence because they could commandeer it if they wanted to under these circumstances. And basically that hearing just blows the truth embargo up. Any reasonable person watching, that's it. And thus set the stage for Biden to come forward on the truth embargo. And that would have been a very orderly, responsible process. It would have unfolded very well. And everything was in place to deal with the hordes of press that were going to show up the next day. All right. But circumstances just didn't allow that. So now we're in a different place. So where we are now is this. Joe Biden is not going to be the disclosure president. We probably will not have a hearing before the inauguration event. We're going to have a disclosure under President-elect Donald Trump, or President Donald Trump. Pure and simple. And there are several reasons for this. One, the stage is fully set. The witnesses are ready. All right. And so that's out of the way. There's legislation on the books, though it's not the full picture. It's adequate for now. The Disclosure Act, as passed last year, even though there wasn't one this year, we can talk about that. It's enough, right? So that, and quickly other legislation could be passed. All right, not a problem. Secondly, with the exception possibly of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, no president or presidential candidate has been asked about this more than President-elect Trump. His son asked him. Several journalists have asked him. He usually gives fairly brief responses. They're not substantive. Sometimes they seem to be a little skeptical, but in fact, on a number of occasions, he has indicated, I'm going to get that out. I'm going to get that out. And that's fine. But it went to another level when he did the 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan. In that interview, either by arrangement or on his own, he brought up the idea of getting the Kennedy records out and the UFO stuff. And I don't know how many million people have watched that interview now. It's probably 90 or 100 million.
Didn't he talk about people in space during that interview?
He mentions people in space. Yeah, so at that point, I mean, it's like, okay, in addition, that's the first reason. Second reason is that it's from watching the news, I am aware that some people in his immediate sphere I like this idea. Right? They're down with that. They have calculated the political benefits from this, and so he has support around him. So that's 2 reasons. Okay. The third reason is that, unlike just about any president that I know, that I'm aware of, history and so forth, there is no president like him in the sense that he will do whatever the hell he wants. Meaning that if he wants to go there and the Department of Defense gets in touch and says, look, we'd rather you didn't go there, he'll just go there. I assure you, this has happened over the years, particularly with President Clinton, Jimmy Carter, where they kind of wanted to go there. And the various entities, particularly, I think, the military intelligence complex of various ways, basically made it clear you don't go there. Okay, they didn't. Ultimately, they backed out. Donald Trump, President-elect Donald Trump, is not like that. In fact, if they tell him not to go there, that guarantees he's going to go there. And so
Okay, now I
That's
have this image of Trump landing Air Force One in Area 51 and just saying, "Hey, I'm here, guys. Pony up with the UFOs."
okay. So that's one of three reasons why I think this is imminent. So at that point, so with that, there's really two ways this will likely go. Both of them are okay. They have slightly different. There's a slightly different aspect to them, but the outcome ultimately will be the same. What I would prefer to happen is that the new president lets the newly chaired Republican chaired Senate Intel Committee, which has conducted itself very well over all these years. Okay, and the new chairman is I think quite sharp. Um, Go ahead and hold that hearing, get those witnesses in, and let's crank this up. Let's do it. And so the witnesses come in. We have this very substantial hearing, days, at least a week, and it blows the truth embargo up. And then the President Donald Trump comes forward and says, yeah, I've followed this up. I've asked questions. I've talked to my appointees at the DOD, et cetera, et cetera. And I absolutely support the fact that, yes, the confirmation is clear. We have non-human technology. We have non-human entities here from somewhere. And we have their tech, we have their bodies, and you want to know more about it. And I, President Trump, are going to make damn sure that you learn as much as possible. That's the way I would like it to go. However, it may go a different way. And it's that simple. It's this simple. President Trump will contact some of his appointees over at the Department of Defense and CIA, right? And of course, the National Intelligence, Director of National Intelligence, and so forth. Ask a few questions like, what do you think? You think Grush was telling the truth, or what is your opinion, or what do you know? And the answers will be, it pretty much looks like non-human tech. And you go, thank you. You'll call a press conference in the East Room, walk on out there and say, I've talked to my people at these key agencies, and they've confirmed to me there is a non-human tech, and so I'm confirming that to you. And that is disclosure, capital D, done. And he is the disclosure president. But before, let me put it this way, in a short amount of time, very soon, well, hearings are going to start appearing in the Senate and the House. Boom, 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 right? And so his kind of unilateral act of confirmation will be backed up very quickly by witness testimony up the yin yang in the Congress, which happens to be run now chaired on both houses by Republicans. So all of those hearings are going to be chaired by Republicans, and there is a lot of a political capital that will accrue because of that, though it's to both parties, to be sure. But as it happens, it is a Republican-run House and Senate. And we are in the post-disclosure world, and then we'll see what happens after that. And I cannot imagine why either the Senate or he would delay this after inauguration. Everybody knows now it's the biggest story in history. Everybody knows it's part of the biggest events, if not the biggest in history. In other words, news story in history, which is why the media is going to get even more intense. And the idea that you're going to delay that, just sit on it for a while, right? I don't think so. And so I'm predicting disclosure within the first 60 days of the Trump administration, if not the first 30 days of the Trump administration. I've done all the math, I've done all the equations, and the answer keeps coming out the same. This thing can't be pushed down the road much any longer. It's
I
done.
sure hope not. What do you think about the information that some people like Ross Coulthart and Brigadier General Haim Eshed of Israel have put out that Trump already did know about this in his last administration, his last term, and was talked out of revealing it or pressured, according to Ross, that he was pressured not to reveal this. Even Ross says his life was threatened over this.
Let me say this.
Do you place any credibility on those ideas?
My response is this. Every president has known about the ET presence. I mean, it took a while for me to come to understand that, but every president was known about the ET presence. Now, what do I mean by that? It means that they were told one way or another that, yeah, it's real. That doesn't mean they're going to do anything about it. Does it mean that they were given a tour of all of the underground facilities and briefed on every USAP? I think some of them were just told the ETs, there is actually a presence here. You don't want to touch that. Okay, no problem. That everyone is known from Truman on. And so, and I understand that. I get it. The truth embargo has some pretty substantial national security basis. And so I think most presidents would go along. And let's keep in mind that the Cold War didn't end until 1989, 1991. All right. And up till then, even as late as 1990, I think we had 80,000 nuclear weapons in 9 country stockpiles with thousands on immediate alert, and we could have all been blown to hell at any time. And so national security is kind of a serious matter. Clinton was the first post Soviet Union president. And that's one of the reasons why Rockefeller really was trying to get him to move on this. And he did try, but he got pushback. Well, I don't know if he was threatened or not, but I know he was stonewalled. Okay. But presidents getting threatened is hardly unusual. They all get threatened. And so every president is known. So I assume without question that one way or another, President Trump was told there's an ET presence. I don't think he was given a briefing. I don't think they went in there and really unloaded all the very significant deep information on this. I think he was just told it's real. And it's very possible, given, I mean, this was an unusual presidency, right? And there was a huge amount of highly partisan agendas and so forth that are underway. It wouldn't have shocked me if, being told that, he just said, yeah, okay, fine, but I'm not going to deal with that, right? It's also possible that he was told, look, this is the case. You should know. We would rather you didn't do anything about it, and we'd rather you didn't know more, okay? Because it's like a giant rabbit hole. You go down there, you never come out again. Something like that. That's about as far as I can go. In terms of, if any, I can't imagine anybody knowing absolutely as fact that he was given a briefing, or given a briefing and then threatened you can't do anything with that. I can't imagine that. And it doesn't mean it's not true, but I've certainly not seen anything. Now, Ross is a very good reporter. He's great. He's fantastic. And I'm sure he's gotten some information. But the way it is, just because you got some information, even if the person is kind of inside, it doesn't make it true. I think eventually history will find this out. Eventually we'll get a pretty good understanding of where all the presidents were, assuming they don't destroy too much information that's in their basically classified archives. And I think it'll be interesting, and in some cases shocking. So, but we do know that the issue came up while he was president. We do know that he was a big backer of the Space Force, which is kind of indirectly connected and may not be connected at all, but whatever. And that's interesting. And of course, we know what's happened in the last campaign. And so, am I concerned that the second time around, President Trump, because he's been threatened with something by somebody, people in government, that he's going to stand off this issue? No, I don't think so. I think at this point, at the culmination of his political life, with this mandate that he's clearly been given, to the shock and surprise of some, that it was told to go to hell. So again, that's my answer to that.
Okay, I love it. I love your optimistic take on disclosure. I hope that we get disclosure very soon, within 60 days of the inauguration. That would be amazing. Obviously, that'd be world changing, especially if some of the technology came with it. That we know that they're sitting on, or likely sitting on. Med beds, or energy technology, stuff like that, right? That would be world changing and revolutionary. And if this stuff is connected to consciousness, as I believe we talked about last time, and it seems like may change the world in other ways as well. And I think that we could all benefit from that. So I love it. I hope you're right.
Can we have some time for some promos?
Yeah, before we leave, I wanted to ask about your coming appearance at the Conscious Life Expo and Contacting the Desert.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll be speaking at the Conscious Life Expo, and I know I'm giving one of those workshop lectures or something, and on the panel. Also, I'm going to be at the Jimmy Church lunch and around the whole time. I'll be flying in from LA for that. And I'll be staying in LA for another about 7 days afterwards for those that may want to get together if you're out there. This is going to be packed. I mean, it's going to be friggin' packed. I know for sure. So, because the excitement level is just growing and growing and growing. So I'm going to do that. And then, of course, I'm going to be speaking at the Contact in the Desert event. I think it's May 29, June 3, but you can find a Contact in the Desert. I'm actually part of producing this. I'm kind of involved in the conference itself, but I'll be doing a lecture, a workshop. I'll probably be doing a panel, moderating a couple of panels, so forth and so forth. And I believe it's going to be an extraordinary event. We are trying to get some speakers that maybe have never presented before. We are cutting back on the number of speakers because last time was just too much. People were overwhelmed. So we're providing less is more, a little more time for people to be able to enjoy the resort and what have you, and also to ensure that we have bigger audiences for each speaker. So that's going to make, I think, it even better. So that's underway. We some 10 speakers are up now. Some more are going to come, but we are working behind the scenes to try to get some speakers that people will go, wow. Oh, not that all of them are great. They're all great, but there are people connected to these ongoing events that everybody knows about, people that have never spoken at one of these events. And we're going to see if we can convince them that they would come and join us, because ultimately, this is all about the American people and how they're going to address the post-disclosure world and the need for them to regain trust in government. And to the extent that these individuals can speak to them too, I think is good and be a good thing. So that's happening. All right. There are key organizations that need your support. One is the New Paradigm Institute at newparadigminstitute.org. And after I get done, I'm happy to quickly share with you these sites. But it is the leading, what I would call activist now entity. It's founded by Daniel Sheen and his wife, Sarah Nelson. They were able to get a substantial chunk of money, right? To me, is like a king's ransom. And so they just took off. They've got a huge website. They've got multiple things going on. It's very citizen activist oriented. There's programs you can get into. They're doing courses. It's a big deal, but it needs millions more because it's set up not just to get disclosure, but mostly to deal in the post-disclosure world. That's when these kinds of entities are really going to be needed. After disclosure, that's when things really get underway. It's not like, oh, we got disclosure, now let's just forget about this. Oh, no, 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 no. And so the New Paradigm Institute is out there, support it. You know, we got all these 100 millionaires and billionaires driving around, buying $300 million yachts, who in many cases do tremendous philanthropy. But this issue has always been sidetracked because of the stigma and the being demeaned by the government, the truth embargo. I get that. But I think everybody knows it's a happening thing now. So I'm hoping some of these really, really wealthy people will realize, wow, this is something they can really make a difference in, right? Like they're making a difference in other notable causes. This is worthy of their funding.
Absolutely.
And right now we need them. And so you got that. You got the Soul Foundation. That's Gary Nolan's scientific think tank out of Stanford. I love Gary Nolan. He's the greatest guy. They're already getting the scientists together to address the post-disclosure world. This is not complicated. Then you got the UAP Disclosure Fund out of San Francisco, which is a 501c4 political nonprofit, which means it's being set up to bring in tax-deductible money to affect what? The political policy post-disclosure. Right. And so you've got that. And then you've got two organizations in my world. One is the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, founded a year ago by myself and Dan Harari out of LA. It's got about 190 members now. It is nothing but a service organization designed to help film people and UAP people get together, find each other, get together, and create content that gets the message right. That documentaries and so much else that the world is going to demand and need, not only now, but after disclosure. And it's really working. People are doing deals. They're coming together. They're finding each other. In other words, it's designed to to penetrate that wall of stigma that was deliberately created to keep high level content people and people that make the big movies and everything else, and the people that are doing the UFO stuff and the UAP docs and the books and everything else, because of course the issue is ridiculous, as so says the government. So we're trying to penetrate, and we are. And so we're inviting people to support it with it's a nonprofit 501c3. And if you're in the film industry and you want to engage this issue, or if you have a history of dealing with the UAP issue professionally in a sense, and you think you might like to be a founding member, get in touch. Go to the website HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org, and I'll show you that in a second. And then finally, Paradigm Research Group, better late than never, I guess. I have a way of procrastinating until the right time.
I don't believe that, Steve. You're a go-getter.
Yeah, a few months ago, converted finally to a nonprofit 501c3. Prior to that, it was a sole proprietor. It was just me operating intentionally, purely under the Constitution, meaning since I'm not an entity like a 501c3, there's no way the government could shut me down for violation of any 501c3 terms. In other words, they literally have to shut me down. And so that's why I did it, because I didn't know how tough it was going to be. It wasn't that bad. But nevertheless, but now it's not an issue. And so I'm now 501c3. The website is changing. It's turning more into a think tank. It's evolving, but it's up, and it has a full donation component, a full module, and people are starting to donate. And that is the more money that I get, the more stuff I can do. Now, I'm not the New Paradigm Institute. That needs millions. Me, I just need tens of thousands, right? Because I'm just a little tugboat, right? Kind of work. But unlike the New Paradigm Institute, which is like an aircraft carrier, I'm like one of those scout ships or something, right? I'm not big, but I can move fast and I can turn on a dime, all right? And so finally, as soon as I get 25,000 in, the first thing I'm going to do is launch the 7th X conference, following the first 6 that took place between 2004 2010, all in the Washington area. This would also be in the Washington area at the National Press Club with a local hotel. And I have plans for that. It could be pretty cool, but it's not something I can bootstrap. Without 25,000, I can't secure the press club. So that's number 1 on my list. Not a lot, but nevertheless needed. So that's where things are in my world. Now, very quickly, let me just do this. This is PRG's Print Media Archive. It is one of the most important projects I've done in my whole 29 years. It's just, I'm an OCD kind of guy, right? Give me a repetitive task and I just launch into it. What can I say? We all have our flaws. So I started this in 2006. And so what it is, it's an archive of linked articles in English language press around the world regarding the UAP UFO disclosure topic. All right. And I only go with articles that are reasonably substantive and media that's substantive. I'm not interested in really fringe stuff or small little operations or silly articles. Nevertheless, I've now archived 16,000 articles. All right. This year was pretty notable, 1,477. That's a lot of articles for this year, not surprising. But last year, the year of the Grush, the largest number ever, 1,883 articles. Okay, so let's make something clear now. The media has covered this issue extensively, all the way back to 1947. There are thousands of articles I can't get to because there's no link to them on the net. They're sitting in the archives in the files of various newspapers, and I don't have the time to go around and play microfiche. But if someone did, they would find thousands more. And so the media has covered it. The media takes a lot of heat about this. It's covered it. It's written it up. It's pretty straight. What it won't do, and it hasn't done, is it won't investigate it. That's the embargo. That's kind of the deal, implicit or explicit. It won't investigate it. It's not going to go digging through trash cans and trying to get inside sources. It leaves that to us. You can get the stuff, go get it. But we, the New York Times, are not going to do that. And the small papers can't. So, but cover it, it has. And believe me, if you read the coverage, you would be a major expert in the world if you just read these, right? Because there's plenty here. But in terms of this year, right, Something I do is I extra earmark certain areas because of the amount of coverage, and one of them is the drone swarms. Okay, and so you see that green there. Okay, so as we go back, as the articles start to unfold, watch for the green. Okay, watch for all that green that's going to pass in front of you here. As we go back a couple of months, every one of those articles with that green tag, that is a drone swarm article. Wow. US, UK, Australia, Canada, Pakistan, India, right? All English language press around the world. Those are all drone swarms articles. Roughly, I think it topped out at around 200, all right? And then the Senate Armed Service briefing, right? The one that Gillibrand did. That is in orange. And so there's huge numbers of articles about that. And so and then of course you can go back and you can do this year by year. All right. So you can go back and look at all the articles from 2023, which again was a huge year. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this, let me see if this works, is that you can use the search function and you can go in and you can search each one of these years. You can't cross year, but you can do it a year. So you want to see all the New York Times articles, you just put New York Times, right, into this, and up comes 22. And you can just drop on down, right? Check them out. All the New York Times articles, check them out and read them. All right? Most people think the New York Times doesn't cover this. Wrong. And so this is a huge resource that I'm trying to promote more because it's enormously valuable. I mean, the amount that you can learn about this subject just from what the legitimate press did. Now, I know people hate the legitimate press, but it's still going to be more helpful than the illegitimate press. And the actual coverage is good here. There are certain articles so grotesque, I didn't include them. But overall, if it's in there, it's got value. And there's 16,000 articles. The dead links need to be fixed because I saved them all and I can replace any of the dead links with what's on my own server. But that is a huge job. I haven't been able to get around to it. Bring this up. Okay, share. This is the website for the UAP Disclosure Fund. This is the fund out of San Francisco. And let me just show you something here. Take a look at the people that are behind this 501c4 political entity to help deal with the legislation post-disclosure. Elizondo, Gary Nolan, Carl Nell, Christopher Mellon, right? Yang Feng, Lester Nair, very significant individual, and others. This is a substantial group of individuals that are going to be raising lots of money. They're not doing this because they are guessing that there's a non-human technological presence on the planet Earth, okay? Trust me on that. All right, let me see. Okay, so this is the new website that's under construction, essentially, but this is the lead page, a temporary lead page, all right? And we have a number, this is a list of projects, new, ongoing, and previous. Right. This is a list of the issues we're going to be addressing as a think tank. And this is resources that people can rely on to engage the issue. It's substantial, but it's going to be improved and bulked up. But there's one project I think I'd like to mention. It's one of my favorites, and it's the ongoing. And let me see if this comes up. It probably will. It's called the In Memoriam. Do you see In Memoriam on your screen?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a project I've been doing for many years, and it is part of the core work of Paradigm Research Group. One of the core things that I've been doing from the beginning is that due to the intellectual ghetto the government created, the truth embargo, the stigma, the ridicule, the demeaning, all of that, which was designed to separate everybody in this field, no matter who they were, journalists, activists, authors, researchers, contactees, from, quote, mainstream society. They don't get Pulitzer Prizes. They don't get awards. They don't get acknowledgement from the mainstream. They have to acknowledge themselves. And so I've done a lot of that. I've given out awards. But one of the things that no one had done, as far as I know, is to memorialize the people in this field. And so what I have done whenever somebody that's in this field that has kind of a signature that has done the work, and obviously I'm sure I've left some people out, I am putting up a page, a link for them where they can then click through and read something about them. All right. I try to find the link that's appropriate, and I'm trying to do this in real time. And so I'll try to go slow here. You can see the kinds of people that are in this section in memoriam. And if somebody knows of somebody that absolutely should be up here, don't fail to get in touch with me and let me know. And maybe I can put them up. All right.
You got some
So
great people up there. One of the researchers of the Nazca mummies just died, I think, in a car wreck a few days ago.
guess what?
You,
Guess
you
what?
might, you might,
Right
might consider
there.
him.
He's right there.
Is
Chris
he?
O'Brien, right?
I forget his
Hang
name
on.
offhand.
There it is. Chris O'Brien. He's up there near the top. You see him?
Yes, I see him.
Okay. Let me tell you a little story about that. This is one of the most unusual things that has happened in this genre to people I know. Uh, and I can tell you this. Uh, Chris has been suffering from serious health problems for years. He's on machines. He has to take oxygen. I mean, he has serious problems for years. And yet he kept working on this issue. He never stopped. And on the day he died, he was working on this issue. I think he was working on a doc, right? He was staying with Ron James. He never stopped engaging this issue. And he starts to have a major attack, essentially breathing, right? And he knows what it means. And I don't think he had his oxygen was not supply. It had run down. And he made the fateful decision not to call an ambulance, but to try to drive himself to the hospital. And so Chris O'Brien is driving down the road to the hospital when he basically goes unconscious from lack of oxygen due to serious cardio issues that he has. He's completely unconscious. So his car leaves the road and it crashes into a sign, right? It's a hard sign of a church in Sonoma. He literally crashes into it and basically destroys it. Now, I really don't think that's what killed him. I think that he died from lack of oxygen ultimately. But Ron James, when he learns about this, he finds out that he was brought into the hospital, but he's deceased, and they tell him about the accident. And so Ron goes out to see the accident. I think the car is still out there. And you're not going to believe this, but he had crashed into the sign, this rock sort of sign. It's like built of rocks. It's got a little sign on it and everything for the Church of Christ, a Church of Christ that was off the main road there in Sonoma. And after it fell down, okay, it kind of came apart a little bit. And so when Ron walks up to it to look at the sign, it doesn't say Church of Christ. It says Church of Chris.
Wow. Wow, that's a great story.
I don't know what to say about that. I know the odds are beyond measuring. All right. But and there is a photo. It's up there. I'm not gonna go get that. But so anyway, so if you're wondering who is going to go in that empty slot right there on the left, it's going to go up later today. I bet you, can you guess who it might be?
Who died?
It's
Steve?
okay. Jimmy Carter.
Did Jimmy Carter die?
Yes. Well, yeah. You've been busy, my friend.
I have been
He
busy.
died at the age of
Well,
100
when did
a
he die?
couple days ago.
A couple days ago. Okay.
So he's going to go up
Well, rest in
for
peace,
obvious
Jimmy.
reasons. He engaged the issue. He talked about it. He tried to do something under his administration. So he gets to go up on that in memoriam. So we got that. Okay. So let's see. Let me see what else I can do. All right. No, while I'm waiting, let's go here. I wanted to promote this. The reason I want to promote it is because it's in UK. It's in the UK. This is the the publication of Christopher Sharp in the UK,
He does great work.
and it's called the Liberation Times. And I got to tell you, it is really good. You go to my archive or go to the site and read these articles. You are going to get one hell of an education as what's going on. That's all he does. This is his, I think he also, I think, does some work for the Mirror. And so he is kind of a journalist, but he's doing this on the side, and it's outstanding. And one of the reasons I'm promoting it is because when he first came out, all of his articles were being picked up by the Google bots. In other words, so I'm doing my alert searches on Google. And so any article with UFO or UAP or extraterrestrial, I immediately get a link to that sent to me through the Google system. And then it stopped a good while ago. It just stopped. It's not picking up anything that he puts up. And I believe it's a change in their algorithm or whatever. And he's on it. And I think that they're going to be able to fix it so his articles start turning up. But it's literally cutting off a huge amount of his exposure. And so I'm going to help out there. And so liberationtimes.com, Christopher Sharp, let me tell you, this is probably, it's up there, certainly with the debrief. It's up there with the War Zone.
Oh no, Chris does great work. I share stuff from Liberation Times all the time. He does amazing work.
Excellent. Okay, so little promo there. Let me just shut that down. But before I do that, I got to go down here. One more, okay, and that is the New Paradigm Institute. Right. This is the site for the New Paradigm Institute, and it is very substantive, and it has one of the things it has right now going on is down here. It is they just launched this. Launched a public call to action demanding the Congress establish a select committee on UFOs and UAP. So you can see a level of sophistication that's pretty important. So I want to promote that. Sorry, it took so long. Yeah, a select committee. That's not the same thing. That is a special committee. Okay. And so we have a select committee on intelligence, right? There are a number of very high level select committees. And so you don't do that unless the issue is very important. And they're basically saying this issue is worthy of that. And having a select committee on this issue would take it to a whole nother level and totally appropriate for what is coming, right? Get that committee now. Don't wait until after disclosure because you'd be looking silly, right? Get that committee going now, get it set up and be ready to, hit the ground running come then. So yeah, that's enough.
No, that's great.
Sorry
I love the
that.
New Paradigm Institute doing great work, and thank you for everything you've been doing and for spending the time with us today and sharing all that. Do you have any final thoughts before we head out?
Well, I'm inviting people to absolutely. I don't know what's the matter with my thing here. I'm inviting people to get ready for post-disclosure. Start thinking about how you're going to deal with it, react to it, how you can take advantage of it. There are, I'll be candid, there are frankly some very significant, how would you say, opportunities post-disclosure to generate income. I assure you, the business of America is business. And the biggest paradigm shift in history will have a lot of business attached to it. So think about that. How could you get involved? Doing good stuff, but also make an income, particularly if you've been in the issue all these years, because you deserve to have some income so that you can do even more and also get some compensation for all the volunteer and all the other stuff you've done for years to try to get the truth of this. But whether you're an individual or a corporation, there are corporations out there that are probably aware of what's going on, and they're already kind of planning their maneuvers because, again, their business is making money for the shareholders. And so they're going to dive into the post-disclosure world. But there are countless ways. There are also plenty of ways you could volunteer, organizations to volunteer for, so that you're actually involved in the extraordinary developments that are going to take place. The time to start thinking about whether you're young or old is now. So I'll leave you with that.
All right. Well, I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it, and Godspeed to all your good work.
Thanks, Mac. I appreciate you, man. I'm happy to come back anytime.
Let's do it.